everyone. I'm Debra Meehl, and I'm the president and the founder of the Meehl Foundation.
And I'm Kristen Smith, certified professional life coach, yoga and mindfulness facilitator, and one of the team members here at the Meehl Foundation. There we go.
So it says we're trying to reconnect. So obviously we have a bad connection. We live in Texas, so if there's a storm that passes by anywhere, there can obviously be problems. So today we're going to talk about raising your threshold to tolerate distress, or raising your threshold to tolerate stress in your life, however that looks. One of the things that dialectical behavioral therapy teaches is distress tolerance skills. And one of the reasons that it teaches those skills is because what happens is that actually the more you're able to tolerate distress, the more it raises your threshold every time you're under some kind of distress to actually overcome that. So as our thoughts, last week we talked about that our thoughts plus our emotion equal our behavior. As you raise your level to tolerate distress, you're actually lowering your response rate to emotional events. And one of the signs of true maturity is to be able to accept some bad news in your life, because none of us, subject to not having bad events, I mean, we're all, bad things happen to good people all the time. One of the things that we don't teach our children anymore nearly often enough is that this is the reality that we live in. And if you live in this reality on this particular planet at this particular time, bad things happen to good people. And there's no necessarily right or wrong reason that that happens, but we can all learn from those experiences. And the other thing that we can do is that once we become aware that we can learn from those experiences, those bad things that have happened to our life, traumas, post-traumatic stress disorder, that kind of thing, we can actually reframe those events that have happened, and it actually causes new neural connections in our brain. Do you, would you like to speak about that at all?
Well, we touched a bit on it last week, but as I said, every time you act in a way different than normal, act opposite, that's a skill. It actually works to weaken the wiring between the neurons that dictated that old behavior.
Right.
And at the same time, it builds a new bridge between other neurons that reinforce the behavior you're trying to change, trying to create.
Right. So what kind of behaviors are we talking about?
Oh, it could be anything.
I'm listening.
Eating your Dove's chocolates, for example.
Oh, yeah.
You talked about that.
I don't eat Dove's chocolates anymore. I don't eat milk chocolate anymore usually because the way that my brain happens to be wired is that one chocolate is never enough, and a whole bag is never enough either. So it's like one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing. So, and there are some of us out there, quite frankly, that once you understand how behavior works, you just eliminate it. And then what you don't say to yourself is, it's not fair. It's not fair that I can't eat Dove's chocolate. It's not fair that I can't drink. It's not fair that I can't, just fill in the blank. It's not fair that everybody else gets to eat pie and I don't get to eat pie. It's not about fairness. What it is about living effectively in the moment. And one of the things that DBT really, really stresses is living effectively in the moment. It's not about right or wrong. It's not about should and shouldn't. It's always about living effectively. And what we have come to know is that those things that affect us negatively also affect our brain negatively. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is that there are 4 ways to respond to any problem. You can solve the problem, get out of a particular situation, remove yourself, remove somebody else, stop a job, get a new job, etc. You can actually solve a problem. You can actually feel better about a problem by learning certain emotional regulation skills. Like if you go to work every day and your boss is negative and that kind of thing, you can learn to basically shut him out in certain ways. And you can learn to tolerate a particular problem, or you can stay miserable. There are 4 ways to solve, and that's basically to solve absolutely any problem at all. And so when you apply those 4 philosophies, those 4 attitudes to a particular problem, you'll find that there's only a few people that actually want to stay miserable. And sometimes they stay miserable for a variety of reasons. We call those fog reasons: fear, obligation, and guilt. Because, again, if our thoughts and our emotion equal our behavior, then if it's an emotion that gets in the way, and sometimes it actually is an emotion that gets in the way, it's usually fear, obligation, or guilt. And so there's a variety of situations that one can get into. Usually it's with loved ones. Sometimes it's about supporting a family. You're in a miserable job and you continue to stay in that job. I tell people all the time there's just not enough Prozac on the planet to cure that type of problem.
Okay, so we've gone over the 4 ways to respond. 3 of them are action-oriented, 1 of them is not, and there's a very, very good reason for that. Because if you can't do anything else,
right.
and there are going to be a lot of times you can't, if you don't want to lose your job, you can't cuss out the negative boss, you kind of just have to grit your teeth and bear it, and your stress tolerance skills are what helps you do that. So, for example, Debra quitting Dove chocolate cold turkey. It's going to be better for her. She's made the choice. She's dedicated to it. Well, what then? Then it's going to be really, really uncomfortable for a few weeks. Like we said, change is not hard. It's always uncomfortable. Distress tolerance is what helps you deal with that uncomfortableness and get through it to later on down the road actually make and do and have the change.
Right. So one of the skills in distress tolerance is, again, we call them self-soothing types of skills. So let's say that we'll take something as simple as Dove chocolate, and let's say that Mark brings home Dove's chocolate and he knows that I can't eat Dove's chocolate. Instead of throwing myself about, having a big tantrum, slamming all the cupboard doors, stomping my feet, doing whatever it is I might want to do at the time, I can leave the room. I can draw myself a hot bath. I can get a cup of tea. I can ask, again, very politely, that he not bring home chocolate, that he be mindful, because it's about being effective. And he actually likes being effective, by the way. So, and he knows that if I, eat too much chocolate, if I eat too much sugar at all, it causes an inflammation response in my body, as it does for millions of people. And it makes my brain foggy, and it also makes my joints hurt, and then I'm not as pleasant to live around. So he actually doesn't, want to be able to do that. So one of the things in the distress tolerance skills, besides doing something like that, is creating a visual response. So one of the things that you can do is just very, very, if you're in a situation, you can, again, just close your eyes momentarily. You can picture absolutely anything besides that particular event. Some people like to go to the beach. Some people like to go to the mountains. Some people like to ski. They like to walk in the woods. There's a variety of visual things. I can close my eyes and I can actually see my grandchildren play. So that's something that brings me momentarily, brings me a certain amount of peace and joy. Now, what we know is that doing that doesn't solve the problem. But what it does is it raises my threshold to tolerate the problem in that particular moment. And that's all that we're trying to do, is that this is whatever it is that's going on, I can't solve immediately. I can't solve within the next few moments. And so when you receive bad information, bad news, when you're pulled over by the police officer, in your car, and you think you're going to get a ticket, one of the things to do is to, again, begin acting opposite. If you feel like you would normally be aggressive type of thing, act opposite. And again, try to have a measured response. One of the things that dialectical behavioral therapy doesn't teach, that I like to teach, is if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So pressing your lips together actually can be extraordinarily beneficial. Now, if you're one of those people that doesn't stand up for yourself, then you can actually learn skills to be able to do that. But in the moment of the crisis, lots of times, it's best not to say anything, again, if you can't say anything nice at all, because it's always about being effective. Mindfulness, again, is always about releasing your anger, releasing your need to be right in the moment, releasing the should and the shouldn'ts from your life. Anything else you can think about that you particularly like?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the self-soothe a little bit because it helps me quite a bit. And I wanted to comment that self-soothing comes in can come, at least, in a variety of ways. And so anything that brings to one or all of your senses a calm or a peace can be used. If you have a certain scent, dab it on a napkin, carry it in your purse.
Absolutely.
If you have a certain sound, even, put it on your iPod, carry that in your purse. My personal favorite is touch. I have a necklace I wear all the time. I don't have it on right now because if I did, you would see me doing this probably for the whole video. So I'm actually using some different distress tolerance techniques right now that we'll get to in a little bit, but that is another example of self-soothing and some creative ways it can be used.
My grandmother always carried gum in her purse and Lifesavers in her purse, though I would, probably do sugar-free Lifesavers now. But it's one of those things that when I was little and I was fidgety, there was always something and a little piece of paper and a pencil. I have certain clients that actually have a piece of paper and a pencil in their purse or in their pocket with them so that they can doodle or draw or do whatever.
They actually have really great, and this is going to sound a little silly, but I swear it works, really great miniature adult coloring books with like mandalas and forest scenes and stuff that are created specifically to help you calm down. They come in a little package with little pencils. Again, pocket, purse, briefcase, you're good to go.
So the other thing she talked about, again, listening, something, on an iPad or iPod for you to listen to. One of the things that I pick lots of times in our home here is the New Age channel. I try not to do country western music where the dog dies and the wife cheats and the husband wants to burn the farm down. We try to avoid that because, again, that doesn't bring us more peace. It just, again, kind of ramps us up into what's right and righteous and in anger.
I'm going to divert for just a second here. This is actually something you learn when you learn our next set of skills, I think, which is emotion regulation. But any emotion you have, as far as the way your brain is wired and the way you work biologically, completely independent of anything emotional or psychological, the chemicals and their effect that create an emotion, it only lasts 8 minutes. If you don't keep going back to it and you let yourself relax, you only have to hang in there for 8 minutes before you can choose to feel a shift. Right. So by listening to the country music, the depressing music, the I hate your guts thrash metal music, any of those things that don't bring you peace, they actually perpetuate the distress that you're trying to learn how to tolerate, and that's a huge reason why that kind of stuff's a bad idea. Just so we're clear.
The other thing, again, about that visual stuff and then listening to your iPod or iPod is that what happens is that it creates an alpha, beta, or theta brainwave for you, and it's usually alpha, especially in meditation. So again, if you can survive something for 8 minutes, as it starts to, again, change your chemical structure in your brain, then what happens is that it gets easier again to tolerate any kind of distress again the next time that it happens. And you get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. So I want to, again, reiterate that nowhere does it say in having these skills that you're just supposed to roll over and play dead. That's not the idea. The idea is to tolerate something in an adult fashion, in a measured fashion, so that, again, it turns on your prefrontal cortex, which is your insight, hindsight, and foresight. And by turning that on, then you can actually start making wise choices, because what dialectical behavioral therapy talks about is always being in wise mind, and we're not always in wise mind continuously, but we try to get closer and closer and closer to that so that it gets easier to deal with life's events. So people say to me lots of times, well, you don't understand how bad it is And we only can understand things from our own perception, but most of us at least, have experienced trauma in our life to some degree or less degree. Poverty, we've experienced abuse, we've experienced a variety of things. And what we know is that it's my reaction to that can change. And when my reaction to that changes, then I start to make better decisions in my life going forward. Anything else about that?
I just wanted to touch on, because I brought up the whole 8 minutes thing, I wanted to go back and touch on 3 words that I feel are very, very important and will continue to be very important throughout the rest of these videos. And those are in the moment.
Right.
The whole point of acting effectively or tolerating or feeling better in the moment is only to make it to the next moment.
Absolutely.
That next moment may come up, and you may still be in tolerate mode, and that's okay, because again, you're raising the threshold each time you have to do that. It's not an instant make it better.
Right.
Just because you're tolerating it doesn't mean it's going to go away immediately.
Right.
Even if you can get through the 8 minutes, another 8 minutes may be down the road, and that's why you keep coming back to tolerate. Do your skills. Work your skills. So
the other thing is that if you're not in the present of that distressful moment, the other thing this allows you to do is to get in the present moment, which again is I can feel my feet in this, on the concrete here. I can feel my hiney in the chair. I can feel being in this present moment. So if I'm not in that situation, I don't go back and rehearse it. I don't go forward tomorrow and think about how terrible it's going to be. I just stay in this present moment here. Eckhart Tolle has done a lot of great work in regards to how you stay in this particular present moment. And as you stay in this moment, how again you release your suffering. So because none of us wants to continue to be in pain and none of us wants to suffer any longer. And so as we move forward in understanding that, then we don't have to rehearse it in our brains. And so one of the things I say is it's the story that you tell yourself. And we're going to talk a lot about stories and how that works in our lives. But I just want you to know that if you've ever been driving down the road and you've missed your exit because you're thinking about something else, it's because you're in the story of it. And if you've missed that exit as you're driving down the road and then all of a sudden you come back into awareness, that means that you're finally back into the present moment. The interesting thing about the story is that it's not reality. It's something that you've made up. And I always think to myself, and I've done that myself, and then I think to myself, isn't that crazy that I've made a this fictitious story is running my brain, and it's not true because it's not even happening in the moment. So the idea is to start practicing being in the present moment as often as you can, so that when those distressful events happen to us, we're able then to, again, get out of that emotion as quickly as possible, so we can, again, be in wise mind and be able to make good choices.
I'm using my distress tolerance.
Uh-oh. Are you hot?
No, the fact that I can only see half your face is distressing to me. Do you want to scoot this way?
No, because I think that it records over here to the right, even though this is where I'm seeing all the messages.
Okay. Just checking.
This is what I'm hopeful of, is that, again, because since we're doing this on an iPhone, we are supposed to be able to read the messages that you type in. So if you do a thumbs up or you do a little heart, we actually see it go across the screen. So I'm going to, again, say please do that. Please send us a little heart or a little thumbs up because it runs across the screen and then we can see. You can also add comments and you can also click share and send our video off. To go back, you can solve a problem, you can feel better about a problem, or you can tolerate the problem, or you can stay miserable. And I will tell people that if you choose to stay miserable, then I personally won't continue to talk about the story with you over and over again. One of the best ways that we help people to affirm and validate that what they went through was terrible, but that, again, we're not going to continue to talk about it over and over again. And the reason that we don't do that is that every time you do that, it wires the brain and triggers the emotion. And we have found through a lot of research with trauma and that kind of thing that re-traumatizing the brain over and over again is just not good. So again, getting the validation that you need, eventually learning to do that validation. That looking away, by the way, is that we have a series of little toads and frogs that hop on the porch at night, and this one was large enough to actually distract us. So as you are telling that story again over and over again, you actually re-traumatize your brain. So, for example, I had a terrible childhood. And lots of times I told people about that, and there are certain groups that actually have you do that. And what I learned after doing a lot of research is that it's not necessarily a very good idea. So I don't go over a lot of my story unless it's somehow pertinent to a particular event, and it will somehow bring something new to the table for that person that's listening to it. I don't do it for myself. So again, a series of distress tolerance. The ones that we've talked about are all self-soothing skills. So there's vision, there's touch, putting an ice pack on the back of your neck, especially if you're in really, really horrible distress, works really, really well. Again, using something like a warm shower, a cold shower, whatever it is that works, a visual stimulation, a hearing stimulation, or a sense of taste. That one you have to be really careful about because if you have an eating disorder or if you tend to overeat, then what you will do is every time you feel a certain amount of distress, you'll go to the refrigerator. So this is for those people that have that particular problem. Basically, you need to put yourself a little Post-it note on the refrigerator, and it needs to say, "Are you really hungry?" If you're not, you can see that Post-it note, and then you can pick something else. Hot tea, cold tea. Try to do no sugar because, again, it just raises your body's inflammation rate. So those are some things that you can do, again, to learn to tolerate that distress, which, again, only lasts for 8 minutes unless you choose to hang on to it for longer. Okay? Anything else about that?
No, I'm just trying to go over all the other skills in my head and decide if, there's something I want to touch on and accept or improve or anything of that nature.
Well, I thought we would probably do that. I'm happy to at least discuss the fork in the road. When you come to a decision to actually make a change, you actually come to a fork in the road, and you can choose to continue to, again, think and behave and have emotions in a certain way, or you can choose to do something different. We all make that fork in the road change when we become aware of our actual thinking. And again, as we observe our own thinking and we decide that we're in either righteousness or anger or vengeance or something that, again, we find unattractive, is the only way that we can actually get to that fork in the road and actually be able to make that change. One of the things I'd like to say is that one of the things that Kristen and I offer is for free for 30 minutes. You can talk to either one of us. There's a phone number on our website at www.meehlfoundation.org. Most of you know that we have that information up on Facebook and Twitter, and you can certainly find us all over the internet. We actually offer people that 30 minutes to be able to talk to us. So that's one of the things that we're offering for free for this particular video series. And the other thing is that the Meehl Foundation has a $10,000 scholarship. And so if you or a loved one has an opportunity to come to us for 90 days, we have the opportunity then to be able to apply that $10,000 scholarship. Those of you that need it for stay with us. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that about covers it. I do have my own Facebook page. It's Kristen Smith LC. Really easy to find. And I have links to my contact information, the Meehl Foundation contact information, and I actually also am in the process of installing, it should be done tonight, a schedule appointment button on my Facebook page that will let you go in, read my About section, all of our information, and actually do direct scheduling in the Facebook app if you, feel so inclined or would want to go that direction.
And we're getting a new skin for our website, and so we're also going to be able to have that feature under coaching. We hope to be able to have that in place by next week. So again, we're here to be able to help you in regards to that coaching, to be able to talk a little bit about distress tolerance. Next week, we haven't decided yet. I think we're going to do some information on food and, again, using food in a positive way in regards to lowering your stressful responses in emotional regulation. Food is incredibly important to understand the aspects about food and being able to lower emotional reaction time and being able to raise your distress tolerance. So we want to be able to give you some quick tips to be able to do that. And then we're also going to be able to talk to you about radical acceptance, which is one of my favorite things, actually learning to live in this particular reality on this planet at this time, and why, again, good things happen to bad people and why bad things happen to good people. So it's kind of crazy how that all works, but we're happy to be able to be of assistance to you at any time. Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to throw this out there. I hope that's okay. I am going to be doing 1 or 2 of these live streams by myself, floating around within the next, couple of weeks to a month. And since y'all are so awesome mutually, I wanted to offer all the visitors and viewers and supporters of the Meehl Foundation to have a little bit of power for the moment, pull my puppet strings. So I'm giving y'all the decision to kind of vote and let us know what you would prefer to hear about more: finding your life purpose or finding your personal value system. And both of those really, really play into a lot of things we're going to discuss down the road. So it's up to you. Let me know, and I will absolutely do that for you.
Okay. Somebody says, somebody has joined. Danielle says, when I decided to change my thinking, that changed my whole life. That's excellent. So I'm glad to hear about that. Again, if there's anything we can do for you, just go ahead and let us know, and we'll just go ahead and sign off for now. Thanks so much for coming to see us. And if you ever have the inclination, come and sit by the fire, and we can talk about this together. Bye-bye.